This is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Faulk. Thanks very much for joining us. The pressure that squeezes all the people of this country, from both the continuing pandemic that has sickened more than 8 million Americans and now the accelerating absurdity that is this presidential election, just won't let up. I, for one, can't shake the feeling that we're headed headlong into a place we've never been, where the rules are different and nothing will ever be the same. These are just feelings, however. The facts are that we are on the precipice of an election that could make all the difference in how we emerge from this dark moment. The power, as much as certain people would have you believe otherwise, remains in our hands. If you vote, it will matter. I'm not claiming your side will definitely win, but when everyone casts their ballots and we take the requisite time and care to count each one of those, then the outcome represents a pure distillation of national will. Such is the democratic ideal. We've heard from many this year that if the other side wins, our side will flex its muscle and offer extreme and destabilizing actions in protest. Are you kidding me? There is no proof, folks, that an organized and malevolent plot is underway from either end of the political spectrum to commit election fraud. Some may be planning to manipulate the courts and the nation's army of lawyers to monkey wrench the results after the votes come in, but the vast majority of votes will come in and will be counted. That, folks, is all that matters. Once we know how the people have chosen, have faith that all the false bravado manufactured by thugs and partisans will fall away in the face of our clear democratic duties. Now, the interview. Tonight we are joined by Eureka City Councilwoman Leslie Castellano, whose advocacy in favor of the arts in this pandemic was recently written up in the Times-Standard. She's here to talk about that and other issues before the Eureka City Council. Thanks for joining us, Leslie.
Thanks for having me, James. It's good to be here.
Booth, I'm having a hard time hearing her, but we'll go ahead. You've been involved in an effort to get increased clarity from the state on artist events and how they might proceed. How has this pandemic impacted the arts community, and what do you think the state needs to do to provide more clarity?
Sure. Well, as you may know, many artists are gig workers, and so they lost many of their gigs, many of their opportunities for work during the pandemic. Because of this, they also weren't applicable or able to receive a lot of the funding that was available to support people.
Sure.
And so, any artists that had performances scheduled or gallery shows or craft fairs or markets, almost entirely those events have been canceled. Of course, some artists have been able to pivot to online platforms, and for those that have, I think there's some people who are doing really well, but that still has left, I think, a substantial portion of the artist community and economy kind of in a semi-permanent or holding pattern.
Now, what do you think the state can do to help alleviate that situation?
Sure. Well, one of the things that's missing is an inclusion of many of the arts-related businesses in the reopening guidelines. So that thing that myself, along with a lot of the performing arts leaders in our community, have been advocating for. And then, of course, there's other things like continuing to fund Californians for the Arts and some of the other programs that fund the arts organizations that exist in our communities.
So, what do you believe? I mean, obviously, we're in a moment where there is a struggle between what people have historically done for pleasure and for spiritual upkeep. I mean, the arts I would count in that category, and the things that are sort of known to be safe and free of infection. What do you think is the proper balance to strike between public safety and allowing for things like the arts and other things, sports and that kind of, I hesitate to call it entertainment, but that's sort of what it is.
Sure. And I think it's a question, right, of well, what's entertainment and what is about social healing, or,
Exactly.
a phrase that's been kind of tossed around a lot is that artists are second responders, and that artists really help communities come together and process difficult experiences,
Yeah.
which is something that, if we haven't experienced difficult experiences before now in our lives, I think everyone, globally is having it's a challenge to change significantly what we are and who we are as a people, I think, in some way. And I'm, of course, humanity is a spectrum, but, most of the people I know and talk to about this, artists don't want to engage in risky behavior or things that compromise public safety more than anyone else. And I think there are ways to conduct artistic practices, performance that can be as safe as going to the grocery store. And for sure, I think everyone during this time, I'm not saying going to the grocery store has no risk whatsoever. Safety is a spectrum that we all have to navigate. And, I think people there are still people who probably are making decisions to stay at home much of the time. And so this is about creating opportunities that, address our human need for togetherness, to witness and be witnessed, to have experiences that help us see and bring clarity to kind of our larger collective experience, but also do so in a way that is, where people are wearing masks and keeping distances and, acknowledging that we also want to care for the physical well-being of one another while we're, trying to kind of wrestle with like the beauty and loss and transformation that's part of this time.
Yeah, it seems to me, and you sort of just covered this, but the arts allow for a kind of psychological processing to occur where people can really reflect on the pandemic and how it's impacted their lives, and also see beyond it, get some perspective on it that they can't get when they're mired within it a lot of times. Now, just to make sure I understand correctly, you had proposed a set of guidelines for the county, is that right? And they rejected it because the state hadn't offered guidance? Is that basically where it stood?
Performers were coming to me because, I'm kind of out there in the community talking about arts and culture. And, they were asking me, like, can we perform? Can we do these things? Can you help me? And I said, okay, well, I'll see if I can make a set of guidelines that I feel are rigorous enough that they would meet public health standards. And the county, took a look at them and said, we can't permit this because the only category they could fall into, according to the state guidelines that we've been given, is that of gatherings. And of course, we know that, gatherings are not permissible, and so it's, and I'll admit it was frustrating, but also I understand that, we're in a rural area with, limited health system, and, I don't want to, I definitely respect, the work our county health leaders are doing to keep us safe. And, and we see it in our, kind of yellow guideline now that we've achieved.
Yeah.
But, I think and so that's why it became an opportunity to say, okay, well, let's take this to the state. Let's get involved in the state level organizing, because I think it's one of those things. A lot of the decisions about opening have been based on pressures from different industries, right? And artists tend to have, I would say, less kind of like political bargaining power at the large level, partially because there's just bigger industries with better people there making their cases. So there's been a few of us locally that have been meeting with a 40-person kind of team with the California Association of the Arts.
Wow.
To meet then with the GoBiz office, which is the kind of the office that oversees economic development for the governor. And they're really the ones who are creating the industry standards. And so now we've been, moving forward to meet with the people in that office.
Do you have any idea what the step would be after that? Is that to propose some legislation or like a legislative package?
I mean, I would say the first step is just to hopefully to have them create guidelines for the performing arts.
Yeah.
There's certainly other fields that they could pull from, like cultural events, family entertainment, movie theaters. There's, certain things that happen in the performing arts that also happen in those other kinds of endeavors. And of course, the other thing would be that, we want our theaters to be around next year and into the future. And I think one of the things, I'm meeting on Monday with some people in the GoBiz office, and one of the things I want to convey to them is a lot of the people they've been talking to are very urban centered, people in San Francisco, San Diego, LA. And, here I feel like we really have a situation in which, places like Arcata Playhouse and Redwood Rocks and, NCRT, Redwood Curtain Theater, like all of those places, sure, they produce events and create art, but they also, I think, hold places in our community for what it means, they create meaning for our lives, right? And and I don't want to leave out like musicians and people who aren't only like dancers and people who aren't only theater makers. There's a lot of ways in which if you think about the memories you have of like a good summer festival, the performing arts were there, making those memories. And so we want to support that economy as we move forward.
Yeah. There was some debate earlier on about gig workers, like you're talking about with artists and stuff, and their availability of funds within the unemployment sphere, about whether or not they can access funds from the various programs that have been offered up federally. Are artists right now who are the ones who are gig workers, are they able to access unemployment funds, or are they still barred from that?
Most people that I know of are not accessing unemployment funds who are gig workers. I could be mistaken, but I've still been hearing of a lot of people who just don't have that access and are trying, and then of course they're picking up other kinds of jobs, which maybe have greater health risks, like working in service industry or things like that. So that's, people have to make a living somehow, right? And keep paying their rent and their bills and everything, so.
We're down to our last minute here, but I wanted to ask you real quick, what do you think the arts do specifically for the city of Eureka? I mean, how does that form a part of our collective identity, do you think?
Sure. I mean, I think the arts are part of this image of a city that's becoming. That's something I love about Eureka, is that, we have this dynamic history, but we also, I think, are moving towards a dynamic future. And I think the arts, whether it's the Street Art Festival and the murals or, Arts Alive, are part of the way in which our community feels so vibrant. And, a lot of why people want to live here and move here. And, they're the thing that I think kind of holds all of the, the day-to-day working and together of like, oh, and then we have this like beautiful story we're telling about our experience.
Mm-hmm. That's all the time we have for tonight, Leslie. Thanks for joining us. Please have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
We'll be right back after this short message.
One last time, the candidates prepare for their final debate.
He's following the radical left agenda.
I want a safe America, safe from 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Who can lead us forward, and how will that come across on stage? A PBS NewsHour Vote 2020 election special, the final presidential debate, October 22nd at 9/8 Central on PBS.
Make Wednesday night on PBS your destination for exploration, beginning with nature.
This cub is special, chosen for the wild.
Followed by Nova.
This is an object we've never been to, something that's never been done before.
And the age of nature.
Across the world, people are studying ecosystems and looking for connections.
Nature, Nova, and the age of nature.
For the unincorporated areas of Humboldt County, the Sheriff's Office is offering a new way for people to reach out for help when the traditional phone call just won't work. If you're hard of hearing, can't speak, or can't make a call because of an exigent circumstance, you can now text your emergency to 911 operators. Here's Samantha Cargus from the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office making the pitch.
911, what is your emergency?
During an emergency, the best way to get help is to call 911. But what if you're unable to call?
The Humboldt County Sheriff's Office Emergency Communication Center now has text to 911 capabilities.
Text to 911 is a new option for contacting law enforcement. It's intended to assist those who are deaf, hard of hearing, speech impaired, or anyone who cannot safely call 911 in a dangerous situation.
It's helpful in the aspect that sometimes on the 911 call, we're having to raise our voices and or re-ask questions multiple times. Where with text to 911, they can text us and we can ask them the question once and it's right there in front of them and they're able to answer the questions that we have provided for them. So it cuts down on the delay of sometimes having to reiterate questions and things like that.
Text to 911 is now available in the unincorporated areas of Humboldt County and the cities of Fortuna and Arcata, as well as the Humboldt State University Police Department and the California Highway Patrol. Other local cities will be launching text to 911 capabilities soon.
If you can't call 911, here's how you can send a text for help. Create a message, enter the numbers 911 into the to recipient field. The first text to 911 should be short, include the address and the location of the emergency, and ask for police, fire, or ambulance. Push the send button. A dispatcher will respond to the text. Answer questions and follow instructions from the 911 dispatcher. Text in simple words, no abbreviations, slang, or emojis, and keep text messages short.
Text to 911 requires a cell phone that has the capability to send text messages, and location services must be enabled. Do not send photos or videos, and do not copy others on your message, as text to 911 only works if 911 is the lone recipient. And finally, texting 911 should only be used during an emergency.
The 911 system is a vital part of our community's emergency response system. We're so happy to have this improved lifeline for members of our community. Remember to call if you can, text if you can't.
For more information on the program, visit humboldtgov.org and search text to 911. One of the main reasons Humboldt County has been allowed to transition into the yellow or lowest COVID alert level is that county health officials have made sure that some of the poorest and hardest to reach areas have access to testing. In her weekly comments to the community, Public Health Officer Teresa Frankovich described how the county has prioritized Hoopa and southeastern Humboldt to maintain access.
We've worked really closely with Hoopa and the tribal clinic there, Dr. Eva Smith and the crew, to try and make sure that people did have testing in that area. So they do have a rapid testing capacity there that is good for symptomatic individuals, not very good for asymptomatic. So on contact investigations and along the way, we've provided backup testing for Hoopa and confirmatory testing. In addition, when Hoopa was experiencing an outbreak, we worked with them and they were able to bring in testing to do large portion of the community really within a week. And so that really helped in that instance as well. Southeastern Humboldt is tougher. And so we have worked to take our mobile team off site as possible to, not only to Fortuna, but to Redway and to Garberville. The hospital in Garberville, Gerald Phelps, does have some testing capacity, and the clinic in Redway does as well. And then we coordinate with them to try and enhance testing there. It's really important for people to understand that cases are assigned by zip code. You might work in or live in Arcata, you might work in Eureka. So seeing where the case is assigned to a resident tells you nothing about where the person was exposed to COVID. And I do worry about people having a false sense of this zip code is safe, this one is not. It's also important for people to recognize that these are absolute case numbers that we're reporting. And it is completely expected that a higher density area, for instance, Eureka, would have more cases than a very sparsely populated remote area.
The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection today offered an update to the battle against the August complex fire, which has burned more than 1 million acres. The fire, according to CDF, is 78% contained as of late this afternoon.
In Northern California, a red flag warning has now been extended all the way through Saturday evening. These are due to strong winds, low humidity, and dry conditions. This critical fire weather will elevate the fire risk like it has the past couple of days. Let's talk about where that red flag warning is taking place. You can see really above 1,500 feet across the north coast. There's a scattering in Humboldt, Trinity, Del Norte, even down into Mendocino and Lake counties. The bulk of the red flag warning remains, though, in effect all the way from practically Redding down through Red Bluff, as we've talked about, down into the Sierra foothills, practically all the way just before you get to the Yosemite region, and then down into the Bay Area, the North Bay Mountains, the East Bay Hills, as well as the Santa Cruz Mountains, all under this red flag warning. The winds we are expected to see really are anticipated to have been the strongest earlier Friday morning. However, we will start to see them pick back up potentially later throughout the day, but they will remain breezy in many areas. This is looking at the wind forecast for today. You can see these areas in yellow. This is not as strong as the winds we saw on Thursday, but they still are enough to elevate the fire risk. In fact, many of these winds may be anywhere from 15 to 25 miles an hour, as you can see from this map, but we will see gusts of 40 miles an hour and even up to 65 miles an hour on some of the ridge tops and in the canyons. So it is going to definitely be very windy. Now, the areas that we really are at the highest threat include some of the mountain areas in the North Bay, specifically the mountains of Napa County and northeastern Sonoma County. Obviously, that is where the glass fire has been burning, so that an area of concern for firefighters. But again, across California, we will have stronger than normal winds. These winds draw the humidity even lower, and that is what elevates the fire danger.
North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman this week announced 2 sizable grants to area tribes that are intended to evaluate and expand school services for Native students. The grants are anticipated to help 2,000 students from the Yurok tribe and 1,000 students from the Tolowa. They include $1 million to the Yurok Native Educational Choices and Empowerment Project and $655,000 to the Tolowa's California-Oregon Indian Student Services Program. Yurok Tribal Chairperson Joseph James said the Yurok tribe is using the much-needed funds to create a customizable support system for tribal students in an effort to close the achievement gap. Eureka Mayor Susan Seaman this week addressed the coming Halloween holiday in Eureka, offering advice to parents and kids on how to get out and have a good time without risking their health.
In just 2 weeks, we'll be entering Halloween weekend. It's a favorite holiday for many kids and adults alike. And like everything else, Halloween will look a little different this year, but it doesn't mean we can't still have some scary fun. The City of Eureka has been working hard to make sure kids 12 and under get a chance to show off their costumes and earn some treats with the pumpkin hunt events at 3 of our local parks: Sequoia Park, Cooper Gulch, and 2030 Park. In an effort to limit the number of people at any single time, the events will be broken into 3 time periods for different age participants. Please wear a protective mask, not just a Halloween mask, if you attend. Social distance, and come at the following times. Children ages 0-6 should come from 11 a.m. to 12:30. Children ages 7 to 9 should arrive between 12:30 and 2 p.m. And children between 10 and 12 years old should arrive between 2 and 3:30 p.m. Please limit your experience to 1 park so many children can participate as safely as possible. And if you have questions, you can call our community services team at 441-4248. Boo at the Zoo is a popular event every year, and this year it'll be a members-only premiere experience for a limited number of Sequoia Park Zoo members in order to meet county guidelines and discourage gatherings of groups of people. The event will happen on Halloween Day from 3 to 6 p.m. Members can reserve their spot now at the Sequoia Park Zoo website, and if you're not a member, you can become one to reserve your tickets. Families with zoo membership will also get free entrance to the zoo for a whole year. And even if you don't attend a community event, there are plenty of ways to plan a fun Halloween with your immediate family. The most important thing to remember is that Halloween is pretend scary, but COVID is real scary, and we want to allow for the fun without creating any health crises. Trick-or-treating is considered an unsafe activity from the CDC to our local health department. But with just a little imagination, we can help make this a special and memorable Halloween for all the right reasons.
It's a genuine pleasure for me tonight to introduce local poet Jerry Martien, who will join us shortly to read his COVID poem, Prayer. Martien, an accomplished poet and creative writing instructor, has for decades distinguished himself as one of the preeminent literary voices on the North Coast. Tonight, he does not disappoint.
This is Jerry Martien reading Prayer. Neighbors up the ridge report a mountain lion prowling in their yard at night. It's the logging over an Elk River, replies another, driving out the animals. It's not hard to understand. You push the wild, and the wild pushes back. The virus is an animal driven from the woods. We murdered the gods who looked after the forest. Then we built the gods a temple, using trees for columns, burning trees to make bronze. At first we went to the temple only to celebrate and pray. Then we'd all go home, except for a few priests to look after things. They built more temples, let in the money changers, the brokerages and banks, service workers, and little dictators to run it all. You see where this takes us? Why we find temples buried in desert sand, decaying in jungles. I worry about the neighbors' cats, the neighbors. I'm sheltering in place today. The air is clear, no planes in the sky. Somewhere a pump is running, another log truck going by, a couple of crows bringing news. The lion is a god. The virus is a god. We're going to the woods to pray.
That's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for watching our newest news endeavor. Stay safe, stay tuned, stay informed.